The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Buckingham Palace, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Catherine, Princess of Wales, walked quietly through the corridors, her heels clicking softly against the stone. She had lived in this world for years now, but some days still felt like she was navigating a maze with invisible walls. Today was different. Today she could feel the weight of unseen eyes following her every move. The palace staff had been unusually quiet during breakfast, their gazes dropping quickly when she looked their way. Something was brewing beneath the surface of royal protocol, and Catherine could sense it in her bones. She had noticed the changes slowly over the past few months. Small things at first. Her scheduled appearances being moved without consultation. Her office staff being reassigned to other duties. Invitations to important family gatherings arriving late, sometimes too late to attend. At first, she had dismissed these incidents as mere administrative oversights. The palace was a massive operation after all. Mistakes happened, but Catherine was no fool. She had learned to read the subtle language of palace politics. Every slight, every delayed message, every whispered conversation that stopped when she entered a room told a story. Someone wanted her to feel unwelcome. Someone wanted her to question her place in this ancient institution. The relationship between Catherine and Camilla, the queen consort, had always been complicated. On the surface, they maintained the perfect facade of family unity. They smiled for cameras, attended events together, and exchanged pleasantries at formal dinners. But beneath that polished exterior, tension simmered like water about to boil. Camilla had waited decades to claim her position in the royal family. Her journey had been marked by scandal, public disapproval, and years of patient waiting. Now that she finally wore the crown, she seemed determined to reshape the monarchy in her image. And Catherine, with her natural grace and overwhelming public popularity, represented something Camilla could never quite achieve: the people's genuine love. Catherine made her way to her private office, a modest room compared to the grand state apartments. Her assistant Margaret looked up with worried eyes as she entered. The older woman had served the royal family for 30 years and knew how to read the palace atmosphere better than anyone. "Your Royal Highness," Margaret began carefully, "I received a message this morning. Your patronage with the Children's Hospital has been reassigned." The decision came from the Queen Consort's office. Catherine felt her heart sink, but kept her expression neutral. The Children's Hospital had been one of her most cherished projects. She had spent years building relationships with the staff, visiting sick children, and raising funds for critical research. This wasn't just another duty. It was deeply personal to her. "Did they provide a reason?" Catherine asked, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. Margaret shook her head. "Only that they felt it would be better suited for someone else. They've suggested you focus on less demanding engagements." Less demanding. The words stung like a slap. Catherine understood the message perfectly. They wanted her to fade into the background, to become a decorative figure who smiled and waved, but held no real influence or connection with the public. She spent the rest of the morning making phone calls, trying to understand the scope of the changes being made without her knowledge. Each conversation revealed another piece of the puzzle. Her charities were being transferred. Her staff was being reduced. Her schedule was being cleared of meaningful engagements and filled with minor ribbon-cutting ceremonies by afternoon. Catherine stood at her window, looking out over the palace gardens. She thought about her children, about the future they would inherit. She thought about the promise she had made when she joined this family, to serve with dignity, to support the crown, and to make a difference in people's lives. She had kept that promise. She had worked tirelessly, never seeking glory or recognition, always putting duty first. And now, someone was systematically trying to erase her contributions and push her to the margins. Catherine knew she faced a choice. She could accept this quiet dismissal, retreat into the shadows, and let history forget her. Or she could stand firm, defend her position, and fight for the role she had earned through years of dedication as the sun began to set. Painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Catherine made her decision. She would not be pushed out. She would not disappear quietly. Whatever was coming, she would face it with the same strength and grace that had carried her this far. She had not come this far to surrender now. The next morning arrived with an unexpected summons. Catherine was requested to attend a meeting in the Queen Consort's private sitting room. The invitation came through official channels, formal and cold. Leaving no room for refusal, Catherine dressed carefully, choosing a navy blue suit that projected both professionalism and confidence. She studied herself in the mirror, seeing not just a princess, but a woman who had learned to navigate treacherous waters with grace. Whatever waited for her in that meeting, she would face it head-on. The walk to Camilla's quarters felt longer than usual. The palace seemed unusually quiet, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Catherine noticed several staff members quickly diverting their paths to avoid crossing hers. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. When she arrived, Camilla's private secretary ushered her inside without the usual pleasantries. The room was decorated in Camilla's preferred style, heavy curtains blocking most of the natural light, creating an atmosphere that felt more like a dimly lit library than a royal apartment. Camilla sat in a backed chair near the fireplace, a cup of tea cooling on the table beside her. She didn't rise when Catherine entered, a subtle breach of protocol that spoke volumes. Instead, she gestured to a chair across from her with a wave of her hand that seemed almost dismissive. "Catherine, thank you for coming," Camilla said, her voice carrying a tone that suggested this was anything but a friendly chat. "We need to discuss some important matters regarding your role within the family." Catherine sat down, maintaining perfect posture and composure. She clasped her hands gently in her lap and met Camilla's gaze directly. Years of royal training had taught her the power of silence, so she simply waited for Camilla to continue. "The family has been discussing the future direction of our public work," Camilla began, stirring her tea slowly. "With my new position, we feel it's important to streamline our efforts and avoid any confusion among the public about who represents what causes." Catherine remained silent, her face neutral, but her mind raced. This was it. This was the moment when everything would be laid bare. "Your popularity has been noted," Camilla continued. The way she said the word popularity made it sound like an accusation rather than a compliment. "However, we believe it's creating an imbalance. The focus should be on supporting the king, not on individual personalities overshadowing the crown itself." "I've always worked to support the monarchy," Catherine replied calmly. "Everything I do is in service to the crown and the people." Camilla's lips pressed into a thin line. "That may be your intention, but the effect is different. When you visit hospitals, when you work with children, when you appear at events, the headlines focus on you rather than the institution. It's becoming a problem." Catherine understood now. This wasn't about streamlining efforts or supporting the crown. This was about jealousy. This was about one woman trying to diminish another because she felt threatened by her natural connection with the public. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Catherine asked, keeping her voice level. "We think it would be best if you took a step back from public-facing duties for a while. Focus on your children, on your family. Let others handle the charitable work and public engagements. It would give you more privacy, more time for yourself." The words were wrapped in concern, but Catherine heard the real message: disappear. "And if I choose not to step back?" Catherine asked quietly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Camilla set down her teacup with a sharp clink against the saucer. Her expression hardened, the pretense of polite concern evaporating like morning mist. "Then we would need to have more difficult conversations about your future here," Camilla said bluntly. "The family must present a united front. Those who cannot support that unity may find their position untenable." Catherine felt anger rising in her chest, hot and fierce, but she refused to let it show on her face. She had been threatened before in subtler ways perhaps, but never so directly. Camilla was making it clear: conform and fade away, or face consequences. "I see," Catherine said, rising from her chair with fluid grace. "Thank you for clarifying your position. I'll need time to consider everything you've said." "Don't take too long," Camilla replied, not bothering to stand. "Decisions need to be made quickly. The king is already aware of these discussions." That last comment was designed to hurt, to make Catherine feel isolated and alone. If the king himself was involved, then what chance did she have? Catherine left the room with her head held high, but inside, her heart was pounding. She walked through the corridors with measured steps, refusing to show any sign of distress until she reached her own quarters. Only then, behind closed doors, did she allow herself to fully process what had just happened. She had been given an ultimatum. Surrender her identity and her purpose, or be forced out entirely. The woman who had spent years proving herself, who had earned the love and respect of millions, was being told she was too successful, too beloved, too effective at her job. Catherine sat down at her desk and stared at the photographs of her children. She thought about what kind of example she wanted to set for them. Should she teach them to back down when faced with bullying? Should she show them that threats and intimidation work? No, she would stand her ground. Whatever the cost, she would not be erased. 3 days passed in tense silence. Catherine continued her scheduled engagements, greeting the public with her characteristic warmth, while navigating the increasingly hostile atmosphere within the palace walls. Every meal, every family gathering became a subtle battlefield where words were weapons and silence spoke louder than shouts. The situation reached its breaking point during a charity gala at Windsor Castle. Catherine had been scheduled to give a speech about mental health initiatives, a cause she had championed for years. She arrived early, rehearsing her remarks and checking last-minute details with her team as she stood backstage reviewing her notes. Camilla appeared without warning, flanked by 2 senior members of her staff. Her expression was cold and determined, quite different from the carefully maintained public persona she usually wore. "Catherine, we need to talk now," Camilla stated flatly, not bothering with pleasantries or privacy. Several staff members were within earshot, but Camilla seemed unconcerned about witnesses. "The gala begins in 20 minutes, Catherine replied calmly. "Perhaps this conversation should wait." "It cannot wait. I've made a decision regarding tonight's program. You will not be speaking." Catherine felt the words hit her like a physical blow, but she kept her expression controlled. Around them, staff members had stopped their preparations, sensing the confrontation unfolding. "This speech has been planned for months," Catherine said quietly. "The guests are expecting it. The media has been briefed. What possible reason could there be to cancel now?" "I've decided to speak instead," Camilla announced. "Mental health is an important issue, and as queen consort, I should be the one addressing it. You can introduce me instead." The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. Camilla was not only taking Catherine's moment, but doing so in a way that would humiliate her publicly. Everyone would see Catherine reduced to a mere introducer while Camilla claimed credit for work Catherine had spent years building. "That's unacceptable," Catherine said, her voice still controlled but carrying an edge of steel. "This is my initiative, my speech, my event. I will not step aside." Camilla's face flushed with anger. The mask of civility finally cracked completely. "You will do as you're told. You seem to have forgotten your place in this family. You are not the queen. You are not even close to being the most important person here. It's time you learned some humility." "Humility," Catherine repeated, her own anger finally breaking through. "I've shown nothing but humility since joining this family. I've worked tirelessly, accepted criticism, put duty above personal feelings, and never once sought glory for myself. But I will not be erased. I will not pretend my work doesn't matter just because it makes you uncomfortable." The room had gone completely silent. Staff members stood frozen, unsure whether to leave or stay. This kind of open conflict was unheard of in royal circles. Disagreements happened, of course, but always behind closed doors, always hidden from view. "How dare you speak to me this way?" Camilla hissed. "I could have you removed from this family. I could make your life impossible." "You're already trying to do exactly that," Catherine shot back. "Reassigning my charities, reducing my staff, canceling my engagements. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I would just disappear quietly?" Camilla took a step closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "The public may love you now, but that can change. One wrong move, one scandal, and they will turn on you just as quickly. I've seen it happen before. I can make it happen again. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Either you step aside willingly, or I will ensure your reputation is destroyed piece by piece. The media loves a fallen princess. They will devour every carefully planted story about your alleged behavior, your supposed demands, your imagined conflicts with staff. By the time I'm finished, no one will remember the sweet, perfect Kate. They'll only see an entitled, difficult woman who thought she was more important than the institution. Catherine felt ice run through her veins. This wasn't just about removing her from prominence. Camilla was prepared to destroy her completely, to rewrite history and turn public opinion against her through calculated manipulation and lies. Before Catherine could respond, a voice cut through the tension like a knife through silk. "I'm afraid I cannot allow that to happen, Your Majesty." Both women turned sharply. Standing just inside the doorway was Commander James Mitchell, head of the Royal Guard, and a man who had served the family with unwavering loyalty for over 2 decades. His face was stern, his posture military straight, and his eyes held something neither woman had expected, determination mixed with disappointment. "Commander Mitchell," Camilla said sharply, trying to regain control of the situation. "This is a private conversation. You should not be here. With respect, Your Majesty." When I heard raised voices and witnessed what appeared to be threats being made against the Princess of Wales, I felt it was my duty to intervene. Camilla's face went pale, then flushed red. "You heard nothing that concerns you? Leave immediately." But Mitchell didn't move. Instead, he stood his ground, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I've served this family for 22 years. I've protected members of the royal household through threats both external and internal. I've maintained silence about many things out of loyalty and duty. But I cannot remain silent when I witness behavior that contradicts everything this institution is supposed to represent." The weight of his words hung in the air. Catherine stared at him in surprise, while Camilla looked as though she might explode with rage. A royal guard was essentially calling out the queen consort, something that simply did not happen in the carefully controlled world of palace protocol. "You forget yourself, Commander," Camilla said coldly. "Your duty is to protect us, not to involve yourself in family matters." "My duty is to protect the crown and what it represents," Mitchell replied quietly. "And right now, I'm not certain who poses the greater threat to that." The confrontation hung suspended in that moment. 3 people standing in a room filled with shocked witnesses. The future of the monarchy balanced on a knife's edge. The silence that followed Commander Mitchell's words seemed to stretch for eternity. Camilla's hands were clenched so tightly at her sides that her knuckles had turned white. Catherine remained motionless, shocked by the guard's unexpected intervention, but uncertain what it would mean. "You have no right," Camilla began, her voice shaking with barely controlled fury. "You are an employee. You serve at the pleasure of the royal family. I can have you dismissed within the hour." "That is certainly within your power," Mitchell acknowledged calmly. "But before you make that decision, there are some things you should know. Things I've kept to myself out of respect for the institution, but which I can no longer ignore in good conscience." Catherine watched as uncertainty flickered across Camilla's face. Whatever Mitchell was about to reveal, Camilla clearly hadn't anticipated this moment. "I've been present during countless private conversations over the years." Mitchell continued, his voice steady and professional. "Palace security requires that guards be stationed in corridors, outside doors, in locations where we hear things not meant for our ears. We learn to ignore private matters. We maintain absolute discretion. It's part of our oath." "Then you should remember that oath now," Camilla snapped. "I am remembering it," Mitchell replied. "My oath is to protect the crown and to serve with honor and integrity. What I've witnessed over the past months has troubled me deeply. The systematic targeting of Princess Catherine, the deliberate undermining of her work, the manipulation of schedules and assignments to diminish her role. I've watched it all unfold and said nothing, hoping it would resolve itself." He paused, his expression grave. "But tonight, when I heard you threaten to orchestrate a campaign to destroy her reputation through planted media stories and manufactured scandals, I knew I could no longer stay silent. That kind of behavior doesn't protect the monarchy. It poisons it from within." Camilla's composure was crumbling. "You're taking her side against the queen consort. Do you understand the consequences of that?" "I'm not taking sides," Mitchell said firmly. "I'm stating facts. I've served under 3 monarchs and watched this institution evolve. I've seen what happens when personal ambition and jealousy are allowed to corrupt the values the crown is supposed to embody. Catherine found her voice. Commander, you don't need to do this. I appreciate your support, but you shouldn't risk your position. Mitchell turned to her with something resembling respect in his eyes. Your Royal Highness, I've watched you for years. I've seen how you interact with staff when cameras aren't present, how you remember names of security personnel and their families, how you genuinely care about the people you meet. I've also watched how tirelessly you work, and how little recognition you seek for it. He turned back to Camilla. And I've watched the opposite as well. I've seen the calculated moves, the cold dismissals of loyal staff, the contempt shown when no photographers are present. The crown isn't just about wearing a title. It's about serving something larger than oneself. The other staff members in the room had quietly moved closer, drawn by the unprecedented drama unfolding. Several of them were nodding slightly, their faces showing support for Mitchell's words. This is absurd, Camilla said, but her voice had lost some of its authority. She could see the mood in the room, could feel her control slipping away. I won't stand here and be lectured by someone who opens doors for a living. Then perhaps you should hear it from others, Mitchell said quietly. He gestured to the assembled staff. How many people here have witnessed Princess Catherine's genuine kindness? How many have seen her stay late to thank every single person involved in an event? How many have received personal notes of gratitude for their work? Slowly, hands began to rise throughout the room. Nearly every person present raised their hand, their expressions showing clearly whose side they stood on in this confrontation. And how many, Mitchell continued, his voice harder now, have been on the receiving end of dismissive treatment, have had their efforts go unacknowledged, have felt diminished rather than valued by the Queen Consort? The same hands remained raised. The message was unmistakable. Camilla looked around the room, seeing the truth reflected in every face. These people, the backbone of royal operations, were not on her side. She had failed to understand something fundamental. Titles and positions command obedience, but only character commands loyalty. This changes nothing, Camilla said, trying to salvage the situation. You're all employees. Your opinions are irrelevant. The decision about tonight's speech stands. Catherine will not be speaking. Actually, I think she will, another voice interjected. Everyone turned to see the king's private secretary entering the room, his expression troubled. Your Majesty, His Majesty the King, has been informed of this situation and requests your immediate presence in his study. Camilla's face went even paler. The king? Who told him? I did, Mitchell said simply. About 10 minutes ago, when I overheard your threats and saw the situation escalating, I sent word immediately. Whatever else may be said about me, I will not stand by while the integrity of this institution is compromised. The private secretary continued. His Majesty has also indicated that Princess Catherine's speech will proceed as scheduled. He wishes to speak with you privately about these matters, Your Majesty. Camilla stood frozen, realizing she had been outmaneuvered. Her attempt to force Catherine out had backfired spectacularly. The confrontation she had initiated in front of witnesses had exposed her tactics and turned the staff against her. Now, she would have to face the king and explain her actions. This isn't over, Camilla said quietly, looking directly at Catherine. I believe it is, Catherine replied with calm dignity. I came to this family with an open heart and a commitment to service. I've never sought to compete with anyone or diminish anyone's role. I only wanted to make a positive difference. If that somehow threatens you, then I'm sorry, but I won't apologize for doing good work. Camilla turned and swept from the room, her staff scrambling to follow. The private secretary gave Catherine a small, encouraging nod before departing as well. Once they were gone, the remaining staff burst into quiet applause. Catherine felt tears pricking her eyes, but held them back. Commander Mitchell approached her with a respectful bow. Thank you, Catherine said softly. But you've put yourself at tremendous risk. Perhaps Mitchell replied with a slight smile. But some things are worth the risk. This institution only survives if it remembers what it's supposed to stand for. Tonight, it needed someone to remember that. I'm just glad I was in the right place at the right time. Catherine reached out and shook his hand, a gesture that broke protocol but felt entirely appropriate. You're a good man, Commander. It's just a man doing his duty, Your Royal Highness. Now, you have a speech to deliver. Don't let this situation take anything away from that moment. The people out there came to hear you speak. Give them what they came for." Catherine stood in the wings of the grand ballroom, taking deep breaths to steady her nerves. The confrontation with Camilla had left her shaken, but she couldn't let that show. Beyond the curtain, hundreds of guests waited, many of them families who had been touched by mental health challenges. They deserved her full attention and her best effort. She could hear the master of ceremonies beginning his introduction. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her dress. This moment had become about so much more than just a speech. It was about standing up for herself, proving that she wouldn't be intimidated or pushed aside. Commander Mitchell appeared beside her one last time. "The king has asked me to convey a message," he said quietly. "He wants you to know that he supports your work and values your contributions to the family. He apologizes for not seeing what was happening sooner." Relief flooded through Catherine. The king's support meant everything. Without it, she would have been truly isolated and vulnerable. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered, "and thank you for what you did earlier." "I still can't quite believe it. Someone needed to speak up," Mitchell replied simply. "I'm just glad I had the courage to do it." The master of ceremonies announced her name. Catherine stepped forward into the lights, into the applause, into her moment. As she took her place at the podium, she saw faces throughout the crowd, people who had traveled to be here, who believed in the work she was doing. She began to speak, and her voice grew stronger with each word. She talked about the importance of mental health awareness, about breaking down stigmas, about creating support systems for those who struggled in silence. She shared stories that had been entrusted to her by people who had overcome darkness and found hope. The audience was completely engaged, hanging on every word. Catherine felt her confidence returning, felt herself connecting with these people in a way that transcended titles and protocol. This was why she did this work. This was what mattered. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, many with tears in their eyes. Catherine looked out at them and felt a profound sense of purpose. No matter what challenges she faced within palace walls, this connection with people, this ability to make a real difference in lives, made everything worthwhile. As the evening concluded and guests began to depart, many stopped to speak with Catherine personally. She listened to their stories, accepted their thanks, and promised to continue fighting for mental health awareness. Each conversation reminded her why she couldn't give up, why she had to stand her ground. Later that night, back in her private quarters, Catherine finally allowed herself to process everything that had happened. She sat by the window, looking out at the illuminated palace grounds, thought about how dramatically the day had unfolded. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Margaret entered, carrying a tray with tea and what looked like several official documents. "I thought you might need this," Margaret said, setting down the tea. "And these just arrived from the king's office." Catherine picked up the documents with curious apprehension. As she read through them, her eyes widened. They were official memorandums reinstating all of her patronages, confirming her staff assignments, and establishing clear boundaries around her role and responsibilities. The king had moved swiftly to undo everything Camilla had tried to dismantle. There was also a personal note in the king's handwriting. Catherine, I apologize for not recognizing what was happening. Your work is valuable and valued. Please know that you have my full support. We will discuss this matter further, but I wanted you to have this reassurance tonight." Catherine felt tears finally spill down her cheeks. These weren't tears of sadness, but of relief and vindication. She had stood her ground, and she hadn't stood alone. The following morning brought unexpected news. Commander Mitchell had been called to meet with the king. Catherine worried that despite the king's support, Mitchell might still face consequences for his actions. She spent the morning anxiously checking for updates. When Margaret appeared at noon with a wide smile, Catherine knew something significant had happened. "Commander Mitchell has been promoted," Margaret announced. "He's being made head of royal security, overseeing all protective operations across all royal residences. It's one of the highest positions available to someone in his profession." Catherine couldn't help but smile. The king was sending a clear message about rewarding loyalty and integrity. And there's more, Margaret continued. The queen consort has released a statement expressing her commitment to supporting all members of the royal family in their charitable endeavors. It's being read as a public backing down. Catherine absorbed this information carefully. Camilla had been forced to retreat, at least publicly, but Catherine knew enough about palace politics to understand that this battle might be over. But the war wasn't necessarily finished. Over the next few weeks, a new normal began to establish itself. Camilla maintained a cool but civil distance from Catherine. They appeared together at necessary events, maintaining the facade of family unity, but the warmth between them, fake as it had been, was gone completely. Catherine noticed other changes too. Staff members who had previously been hesitant to show support now greeted her with genuine warmth. She received letters from people throughout the palace, many thanking her for standing up for herself, and by extension, for them. Mitchell's intervention had inspired others to speak more openly about problems they'd witnessed. The media picked up on the shift in dynamics, though they didn't know the full story. Articles appeared praising Catherine's dedication to her causes and noting her growing influence. Some even suggested that she represented the future of the monarchy more than anyone else in the family. One afternoon, Catherine encountered Commander Mitchell during a security briefing. They maintained professional formality in front of others. But as the meeting concluded and they found themselves briefly alone, she pulled him aside. "I never properly thanked you," she said quietly. "What you did changed everything. You risked your entire career." Mitchell smiled slightly. "In the end, Your Royal Highness, we're all just people trying to do the right thing. Sometimes that means taking risks. I'm just grateful it worked out. It worked out because you had the courage to act," Catherine replied. "That takes a special kind of strength." "So does standing up to a queen," Mitchell countered. "You didn't back down even when threatened. That takes strength too." They shared a moment of mutual respect. Two people from completely different worlds who had found common ground in doing what was right rather than what was easy. 3 months had passed since the confrontation that changed everything. Catherine stood in the children's hospital, the very patronage that Camilla had tried to take from her, watching young patients participate in an art therapy session. Their faces, despite their illnesses, glowed with concentration and joy as they created colorful paintings. The visit had been scheduled for an hour, but Catherine stayed for 3, sitting with children, talking to worried parents, and listening to nurses describe the difference the new funding was making. This was what she fought for. This was what made all the palace politics and power struggles worthwhile. As she prepared to leave, a little girl named Emma, who was being treated for leukemia, approached shyly. She held out a drawing she had made, a princess with a crown, surrounded by hearts. "This is you," Emma said softly, "because you came when we needed you." Catherine knelt down, accepting the drawing with genuine emotion. "Thank you, Emma. This is beautiful. And you know what? You're very brave." "You're brave too," Emma replied with the simple wisdom of a child. "My mom says you fight for us even when it's hard." Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, but smiled through them. "We fight for each other, Emma. That's what makes us strong." The drive back to the palace gave Catherine time to reflect on how dramatically things had changed. The confrontation with Camilla had been a turning point, not just in their relationship, but in how the entire palace operated. Commander Mitchell's intervention had opened a door that couldn't be easily closed. People were speaking up more, challenging unfair practices, and supporting each other. Camilla had learned that power without respect was hollow. Her attempts to control through intimidation had backfired, revealing the difference between authority derived from a title and authority earned through character. The king had made it clear that while Camilla held the position of queen consort, she was expected to conduct herself in a manner worthy of that position. When Catherine arrived back at the palace, she found an unexpected visitor waiting in her office. Camilla sat in one of the chairs, her posture stiff and uncomfortable. Margaret hovered nearby, clearly uncertain whether she should stay or go. "It's all right, Margaret," Catherine said gently. "Please give us a moment." Once they were alone, silence stretched between the two women. Camilla looked different somehow, less imperious, more uncertain. "I suppose you're wondering why I'm here," Camilla finally said. her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "I am," Catherine admitted. Sitting down across from her, Camilla took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize. Not because I was ordered to, though the king has certainly made his expectations clear, but because I've had time to think about what happened and why." Catherine remained quiet, letting Camilla continue at her own pace. "I spent so many years waiting, fighting for my position," Camilla said, her voice thick with emotion. "I endured ridicule, hatred from the public, years of being seen as the villain. When I finally achieved the role I'd waited for, I thought everything would be different. I thought people would finally see me as I wanted to be seen." She paused, looking down at her hands. "But they didn't. They still loved Diana's memory. They transferred that love to you, and I couldn't accept it. I saw your popularity not as a gift to the monarchy, but as a threat to me personally." Catherine felt an unexpected surge of sympathy. She had never considered Camilla's perspective in quite this way, never thought about the deep insecurity that might drive her actions. "I was wrong," Camilla continued. "Wrong to target you, wrong to try to diminish your work, wrong to threaten you. I let my own fears and jealousies turn me into exactly the person I never wanted to be." "Thank you for saying that," Catherine replied carefully. "I know it couldn't have been easy." Camilla looked up, meeting Catherine's eyes directly. "The truth is, you've shown me what I should have been all along. You've never sought glory or recognition. You've simply done the work, connected with people genuinely, and let your actions speak for themselves. I've been so focused on managing my image that I forgot the actual substance behind it." Catherine considered her words before responding. "I understand feeling threatened. I know what it's like to be compared to someone, to feel like you can never measure up to a memory or an expectation. But we're not in competition. There's room for all of us to make a difference in our own ways." "Is there?" Camilla asked. "The public has already decided who they prefer." "The public responds to authenticity," Catherine said gently. "They want to see real people, real emotions, real connections. If you let them see the person behind the title, if you stop trying to control every perception and just be yourself, they might surprise you." Camilla was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if I know how to do that anymore. I've spent so long being defensive, being strategic, and learned," Catherine suggested. "It's not too late. Work with your causes from the heart, not from strategy. Stop seeing every interaction as a photo opportunity and start seeing it as a chance to genuinely help someone. The rest will follow." They sat together in silence, two women who had been enemies finding unexpected common ground. Catherine knew she couldn't fully trust Camilla yet, knew that years of behavior patterns didn't change overnight. But this conversation was a start, an opening towards something better. "I can't promise we'll be friends," Camilla said honestly, "but I can promise I'll stop working against you. And perhaps in time, we might find a way to work together." "That's all I've ever wanted," Catherine replied. "A chance to serve without constantly looking over my shoulder." After Camilla left, Catherine sat alone with her thoughts. The journey had been difficult, filled with moments when she'd doubted herself and her place in this complicated family. But she had persevered, had stood up for herself, and had ultimately prevailed. Commander Mitchell's courage in speaking up had been the catalyst. But Catherine knew that if she hadn't already built relationships with staff, hadn't already proven her character through years of dedicated work, his words would have fallen on deaf ears. The victory wasn't just about one confrontation. It was about the culmination of years of doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. That evening, Catherine joined her family for dinner. Her children's laughter filled the room, innocent and joyful. She watched them and felt profound gratitude. She had fought to protect not just her position, but the example she set for them. She had shown them that standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult, even when you're afraid, is always worth it. As she tucked her youngest into bed that night, the child looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Mummy, why do you visit sick children?" Catherine smiled, smoothing back her child's hair. "Because everyone deserves to know they matter, that someone cares about them. And because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can make the biggest difference. Like when Commander Mitchell helped you." Catherine's eyes widened. She hadn't realized her children knew anything about what had happened. "How do you know about that?" "I heard the staff talking. They said he was very brave and that you were too." "He was very brave," Catherine agreed. "He reminded everyone that doing the right thing is more important than doing the easy thing." "I want to be brave like that," her child murmured, eyes already closing. "You already are," Catherine whispered, kissing her forehead. Every single day, standing in the doorway, watching her child sleep, Catherine reflected on everything that had happened. The palace would always have its politics and power struggles. There would be other challenges, other conflicts, but she had learned something invaluable. She was stronger than she thought. And she didn't stand alone. Somewhere in the palace, Commander Mitchell was making his rounds, ensuring the royal family's safety. Staff members who had found their voices were going about their duties with renewed dignity. And Camilla was perhaps beginning the difficult work of examining her own choices and motivations. The story could have ended differently. Catherine could have been forced out, silenced, erased from her role. But because one person had the courage to speak up at the crucial moment, because years of genuine kindness and dedication had built a foundation of support, she had survived and even thrived. As Catherine turned off the light and closed the door, she thought about Emma's drawing, still safely tucked in her bag. A princess surrounded by hearts. That little girl had understood something profound. Real royalty wasn't about crowns or titles or power over others. It was about having the courage to care, the strength to stand firm, and the wisdom to know that fighting for what's right is always worthwhile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve, new moments to make a difference. But tonight, Catherine could rest knowing she had passed an important test. She had faced down threats and intimidation, had stood her ground with grace and dignity, and had emerged not just intact but stronger. The palace lights gleamed in the darkness, ancient stones holding centuries of secrets. Within those walls, the next chapter of royal history was being written. And Catherine had secured her place in it, not through manipulation or force, but through the simple power of being authentically, courageously herself.